like to introduce Mike Hoebel, who, as Mitch said, is the president of the Galiano Island Affordable Housing Society. And he's our moderator. But I also like to say something about Mike and recognizing his leadership in the housing space for the islands and the coast. Mike is the co-founder of RIEP and a long-standing community builder and housing champion. He's been leading the way for RIEP's housing policy working group that grew out of the Rural Islands Economic Forum of 2023. And Mike has been a standard bearer for affordable housing for all. So Mike, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Francine. It is really my pleasure to be the moderator for this morning's panel presentation about affordable housing initiatives happening in island communities up and down the strait. And as we all know, the lack of affordable housing is truly a crisis in our communities. And housing policy, as you mentioned, was a major item for discussion back at RIEP's 2023 in-person forum in Gabriola. So today we're going to hear from a number of people across these island communities about housing-related initiatives underway in their communities. And this is just a sampling of a lot of activity. And it's our opportunity to kind of share information and to learn about other projects going on in other communities. So today we're going to hear about an important study of housing needs and options on Salt Spring, about a quite unique home sharing program on Salt Spring and the Southern Gulf Islands, about an innovative cottage co-op project on Galiano, my home island, and about a variety of multi-unit affordable rental housing projects on other islands. So in the slide in front of you, you can see who our panelists are going to be. So first we'll be hearing from Elizabeth FitzZaland from Salt Spring Solutions. Then I'd like to, this is just giving them a heads up, then I'd like to go to Adam to talk about the Housing Now program. Bruen Black is going to share some information about the Cortes Housing Society's initiatives. April Lewis from Hornby next. Simon Palmer from Denman. Deb Goldman from Mayne. Avi Bryant here on Galiano, and I'll wrap up and share a bit of update about the Galiano Affordable Living Initiative Society's project on Galiano. And following the panel presentations, we'll touch briefly on some advocacy issues to the province. So to keep to our allotted time, I've asked each panelist to take just 3 to 4 minutes. It's going to be hard to give you an update about their project or initiative, to comment about challenges they've faced, and to share perhaps an insight or lessons learned along the way. Now, during these presentations, if you have comments or questions, please post them in the chat. And at the end of the presentations, we'll respond to as many of those comments and questions as we can get to. So as mentioned, to set the stage, I'd like to ask Elizabeth to tell us about the work being done by Salt Spring Solutions on a housing solutions framework. And over to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike, and to everyone who's put on this forum. I'm so deeply appreciative, and how great to be in the company of so many other fellow housing advocates and champions in this roundtable, and even as scrolling through all the people who are on the session today. Like, I know there's just so many people out there who are working really hard for our islands to find that balance between keeping our communities vital and making sure that our young people can stay here, but also recognizing that we're in really unique places with a lot of natural beauty and quirky infrastructure, quirky funding, quirky governance. So thank you everyone for being here. I think I've just used up one of my minutes. So I'm sorry, the slide's so wordy. I didn't really think about it in terms of how it would read online here. But maybe I'll hold up instead this, I don't don't know if my camera's going to let me do it. It has to be like right where my face. Nope, not working. So what I was holding up, all it says is it's a turquoise page. It says Homes for Islanders, an integrated housing solutions framework for Salt Spring Island. So Salt Spring Solutions started back in 2018, recognizing that we're really stuck on our island around certain issues that were really vital and critical, and that we felt like we were being framed maybe too simplistically, a little bit too black and white, a little bit too environment versus economy, and not really looking at how there's actually a lot of crossover, and there's actually a lot of opportunity for us to find solutions together. We're, of course, in the Southern Gulf Islands. We're in the Capital Regional District in the Islands Trust area. And we're finding that the fragmentation between those governance systems in our water districts, et cetera, were really meaning that not a lot was moving forward. We tried a lot of different things since 2018 in terms of trying to move the dial. And in 2022, we put together this framework, which is really like a strategy for how we can bring those different organizations together. And we identified, I guess, altogether 40 different strategies that were under kind of these big umbrellas. One is coordination and properly resourced local approach. So that's really about working together across these different organizations. The second strategy was effective public communication, engagement, and dialogue. Third strategy is preservation of rural areas and nature space through clustered housing. Fourth strategy was readying our village center for more housing, so where we have the most servicing and kind of critical mass. And then the fifth strategy was accessory dwelling units in the right places. Unlike most of the other islands, we have very restricted accessory dwelling unit regulations on Salt Spring Island. And so of those 40 strategies, we actually just did a review kind of 2 years in here, and there's 11 of those strategies are either done or underway, which is actually a good reflection because sometimes we can feel really stuck, that like nothing's happening. And just in terms of the reflection here that Mike's asked for, as we did this review and really looked at where the movement's been and where the movement has not been, we've really seen a lot of leadership from our largest water district, who serves a huge portion of the households here on Salt Spring. And we've also seen a lot of leadership and progress from the Capital Regional District, both at the regional level and at the local level, which has been great. And where we haven't seen very much success is at the Islands Trust level. And so the areas that we identified through this framework that would be led by the Islands Trust, that's not because there hasn't been attempts by our local trustees or by our local staff. I think there's been lots of attempts actually at both levels. But I think it does point to some structural problems at the trust and actually being able to move forward the housing portfolio on Salt Spring Island. So those, I think I've used up all my time, so thank you.
Oh, excellent timing. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And by the way, if people would like to check the chat, you'll see links to the Salt Spring Solutions website and housing, where I think you can download that report, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks again so much. I'd like to, moving right along, turn to Adam. Adam, can you come on and tell us about the Housing Now program?
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Adam Evanik, the new Salt Spring Island coordinator for Housing Now. The Housing Now kind of flagship project is the Home Share Registry, where we help facilitate home seekers and homeowners to come together, homeowners who have available rooms. There's a lot of available empty rooms in the Southern Gulf Islands. So mainly a lot in our senior community. So we are hoping to just facilitate bringing those two groups together to put people in homes and to create some support networks within that, do it through intergenerational relationships, helping with social isolation, things like that. But our project status at the moment is that we're kind of moving into the new year with a lot of enhancements to our registry program. One of the challenges we've been facing is encouraging homeowners to come into the registry program. We have a lot of home seekers, but not so many homeowners. And a big issue they've been having is just things along the lines of security when bringing people into their home and feeling secure and safe in that. And then also having home seekers feel secure in that arrangement as well. So we're working to launch a new platform that allows things for us to build lease agreements, to build credit with the home, with the renters, to have affordable, cheap insurance for the renters, manage agreements, manage rent, do all those kind of things so people feel really secure, which would then hopefully bring in more homeowners to the registry program. We've been doing pretty good. We've made, I believe, 10 matches this year so far. So that's good. So a big part of this year is that we want to start sharing those stories to try to help kind of move the needle of understanding of how home sharing is actually a really beneficial program and brings people and really strengthens community resilience. And I would say a key insight or lesson we've kind of learned is that we've been hosting a lot of talks recently to kind of get a sense of what makes a home for people and along those lines. And what we found is that every time we have these talks and discussions, it always kind of spirals into community. People just really want to feel like they're part of community. They have a stake in their community. The effort they put in is reflective in the growth and the interconnectivity of their communities, and that it's resilient. They know their neighbor. They can trust their neighbor. They can rely on each other when things get challenging out there. So I think it's really inspiring that a lot of people want to reconnect and build community. But I'm not sure if that was 4 minutes, but yeah.
No, excellent timing. Everybody is really keeping to time, so that's great. I don't know if we're going to get a link to the Housing Now in the chat.
I just put our link tree in there, which will
Yeah,
have the links
okay.
to all of our sites and
thanks.
programs.
Thanks
And
so
I've
much.
put it as well higher in the chat, you bet.
Yep. Okay. Thank you so much. Well, we're doing very well. So let's move on. Moving up north. How about Cortes Island? Bruen, are you there?
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Bruen Black. I'm the project manager for the Cortes Housing Society. We have we have a main housing project that we're working on, and we have a couple housing tangential projects that we also have on the go. We have the opportunity of having land. Rainbow Ridge was, the community helped raise funds for buying land kind of in the heart of Manson's Landing. We also have another piece of property at Orchard Village that we're exploring, creating a woodmaker space to kind of increase capacity, mentorship, a gathering place for the island's crafty people, which we have a lot of, and potentially a space to create tiny homes. So that's an exciting project that we're working on. We're in the process of clearing the land for Manson's Landing, which is a big step because we've had the land for 7 years and we've been applying for BC housing funding for the last probably five years. So there's been 3 unsuccessful applications for the BC housing funding, and now we're kind of trying to pivot to a more grassroots approach and build capacity within community, local training. One of the first buildings that we'll build there is a laundry facility, which is really much needed by the community. Another thing that we have ongoing is the aquifer health project, where we're kind of investigating the health of our aquifers and where critical areas of just critical areas to watch out for in terms of aquifer sensitivity, which is a pretty key issue down south, as I understand. So we're trying to be proactive with our water. Some of the challenges we're facing, I guess, is not going the standard BC housing route. We've kind of put that on hold, and we're deciding to kind of do things more grassroots approach, seeing and expanding the local skill set and knowledge. And so one of those challenges is just being adaptable. We don't have anything, like, we've basically gone back to the drawing board on a project that was years in the making with a bunch of different consultants, and just trying to reduce the layers of complexity involved with that in a way that's suitable for Cortes. And really hearing our community and being able to respond to that. So that's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, and it's been really exciting. I feel like there's been a renewed interest and energy surrounding Rainbow Ridge and the housing here. And yeah, so I guess the lessons learned is that the conventional path for acquiring funds, the BC housing, we didn't find it was super suitable for Cortes any longer, and the fact that we'd spent 5 years trying to obtain that was a little discouraging. So I think, yeah, lessons learned is how can we see local opportunity and move forward with that, and how can we look beyond conventional fund acquisition paths for remote communities like ourselves. So yeah, it's kind of up to us to determine what solutions fit to maintain the island cultures that we all cherish. So that's me and Cortes
Yeah,
Housing Society.
thanks, Bruen. I also just wanted to give a shout out to Cortes because you folks have hosted a series of webinars on a whole range of housing topics, and those are really helpful and open, I think, people's eyes to a whole range of issues and opportunities. So stay tuned to Cortes and take in the next webinar, which I think is coming up shortly. Maybe somebody could post the link to that.
Yeah, I'm popping the link to the events page in the chat now, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Well, moving along, I'd like to turn to Hornby and April.
Mute myself.
Yes.
Okay. I'm from the Hornby Island Housing Society, and we've been in operation. I'm their administrator, and they've been in operation since the 90s, and have two projects. One is an 11-unit village for seniors who live independently. Most of them are single houses, a couple of duplexes, and those folks, many of them have been there for 10 or 15 years, a long time. The second project is we did go the BC housing path, and it took a really long time. There was some community challenges around the piece of land that was donated or did an amenity trade for community housing, and that held us up for a while. But the project actually did get funded. It's under construction now, and they're hoping for occupancy by 2026, early in 2026. I hear strongly the maintaining the island values, the rural values, and that's a real challenge when you're using BC housing funding, because they are used to building for urban settings. So part of our challenge has been the cost of the project. Because we have no infrastructure here, we don't have a sewer system, we don't have water systems, so the civil costs are really, really high, and that was a challenge for BC Housing to consider funding. We've had a lot of success with Islands Trust. They've been incredibly supportive and move things along and continue to move things along. Our local Comox Valley Regional District also supported our application, and because of that local support, it allowed us to engage CMHC to provide the rest of the funding that we needed for that project. One of our challenges is that we're an aging board, and there's a lack of volunteers coming to fill the gaps as folks would like to step down. The board's also doing some strat planning right now and looking at the possibility of moving from a working board to a governance board. But that would mean that we would have to pay money to do all the things that the volunteers have currently been doing, including maintenance of the buildings. Some of them are getting older. We'll be looking at new roofs coming up. So another challenge is finding the money to make the capital improvements to maintain those buildings. A challenge for us too is trying to engage with the decision makers around funding for houses in rural areas to educate them about the differences between what's needed in the country and what's needed in the city. And so that's probably the biggest challenge, is getting that across, is that we actually don't really want 26-unit projects. We would like smaller projects scattered throughout the island, but that's not how the funding works. And so we've been torn between building housing because folks need it, and building housing that we would really like to see. So that's been a real hard place for us. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when it comes time for people to move in there. Because lots of folks go, oh, you know what? I'd rather have a roof over my head, even if it's in really close quarters. And that's not why I moved to Hornby, was to live in an apartment building. But they'd rather have a roof over their head. So I think that's probably everything. Oh, that's the most important part, I think.
Okay, thanks so much, April. We just have a very brief minute left, but would you, I think you've been working with Macola, haven't you?
We have worked with Macola. So part of when the opportunity came up to work with this, to have this piece of land, it wasn't our project, it was another organization's project. And BC Housing said, if we're even to consider it, you have to go under Hornby Housing because they're long established. They've worked for a long time in housing. And so the board knew that they didn't have the capacity to handle a 26 unit project. And so we leased the land and the project to Macola, and they've done the negotiating with BC Housing, and they've done the development and building, and they'll also operate the facility. So that's one option. We've retained some influence around choice of tenants. We've set a really clear criteria for Hornby First folks, and we'll see how it plays out when it comes time to selecting tenants. But we're really happy with the work that Macola has done for us, and it was their expertise and experience, I think, that made that project successful.
Yeah, and
I think the thing I've learned is patience and don't give up.
Yeah, and Macola is a First Nations based group, isn't it?
Yes, they do a lot of work in First Nations communities, and so they've been really helpful. And yeah, I understand why you would not want to go that route, but whatever route you go, it's going to be a lengthy process.
Okay, thanks so much, April. I'd like to turn over the mic to Simon Palmer from Denman.
Mute myself. Yes, Simon Palmer from Denman. We've been chasing affordable housing on Denman for the past 12 years. 3 years ago, we got ownership of a downtown site within walking distance from the ferry and spitting distance from the general store, community school, community hall, and so on. We applied in 2023 for construction financing to the Community Housing Fund of BC Housing, and also to the Cooperative Housing Program of CMHC. We were told by both organizations that our applications were very strong technically.
Simon, people are asking if you could speak a little bit closer to your mic. You're coming through a little bit quiet. Thank you.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah, could you speak a little closer to your mic, Simon? You're a little faint for some people.
Sure. I was saying that we applied in 2023 for funding from BC Housing under their Community Housing Fund program and CMHC under their Cooperative Housing program. Both submissions were supported by funding applications to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We were unfortunately unsuccessful in both, and we're pretty sure that the reason was the construction premium cost of building on an island. That and the size of the project itself. I think we all know that 24, 26 unit projects, price-wise per square foot, are not as competitive as larger urban ones. We plan to apply again when the next call comes through, which we understand is going to be sometime the first half of this year. And if we are further not successful, then we have to have a total rethink of what path we're going to take, whether it is something similar to Cortes or what. There's one question I would pose, and I put it in the chat, but if it gets lost in the chat, I'd like to pose the question now, if I may. We have a meeting scheduled with the housing minister towards the end of this month. And one request we're going to make is that there be serious consideration of a funding stream allocated to rural island projects. And I wonder if any of the panelists over the remaining course of this session might think about what further constructive request we might make on behalf of the islands to the minister when we meet with him. And if you could get back to me at some point, perhaps, Michael, you'd allow a moment or two for anybody who's got a further suggestion, because I think it is a good opportunity for us to pass along some of the opinions that the panelists may have in this regard.
Yes, I mean, I was going to suggest let's hold that for the end of the session if we can, but I'll also just mention I was going to give a little bit of an update about approach to the province, to the housing minister from a couple of the regional districts at the end of the session as well.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so thanks, Simon. I think next up we have Mayne Island. Deb, are you there?
Hello, I'm here. Good. Thanks, Michael. I'd like to just mention right off the top that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That what April is talking about, we certainly have experienced, and also Simon. So I'll just launch into my my presentation here. So we are building Salish Grove, which is 10 units of affordable housing on 3 acres of donated land. It's beautiful treed land, centrally located to the commercial area services and the ferry. And many of you know that the CRD built a walking biking pathway from the ferry to our main commercial district, and that runs right along the land that we're building the housing on. So that's very, very useful for us. It provides accessibility. Mayne Island has no purpose-built rental housing and no seniors housing. So this development, Salish Grove, will provide the only purpose-built rental housing and the only seniors housing we're building for families, seniors, as I've mentioned, workforce housing. There's only 10 units, but I want to bring into people's awareness that 10 units by population, 10 units on Mayne Island is the equivalent to 2,000 units of affordable housing being built in the greater Victoria area. So it's no small deal here for our economic sustainability and people's housing security in our community. We're building a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, and these units will have the mixed rental model intended for the funders as well as the incomes of those residents. We're working with wiser projects. I would like to also mention that we keep in mind ecological sustainability here. We're building currently to step code 4 and looking to design for net zero ready. We are remediating damaged land that had been damaged from successive logging operations to increase the permeability of the soil, as well as we will be restoring a cedar wetland forest. All of the area that is beyond the building area is protected through our covenant with the local trust committee from further development. And we're working with wiser projects. And where we are right now, we're in the pre-development stage, advancing to the building permit. Over the last 5 years, as I mentioned, we've rezoned the lands with the Islands Trust to multifamily residential. The affordable housing is secured through a housing agreement, and we are in the process of subdividing the land for a transfer of title, and that's going to be very, very important as we go forward. We did apply to BC Housing in the last go round for funding. We weren't successful. We will be applying again in this next go round. As Simon says, we expect it to be launched shortly. We've been very, very lucky in receiving a good chunk of pre-development funding this year, which is helping us move the project forward. But and so we have our building designs and energy modeling on the buildings. We've drilled and licensed a well for potable water. We've got Class B estimates for the build, and we're in the final construction designs. Our challenges have been, of course, the pre-development funding. It's very, very difficult to get that, and it's cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to even get through the rezoning process, and many more hundreds to get to building permit. And so that's a really important piece. And I recognize what people have been saying is that our 10 units, we're not in anyone's sights for developing housing. It's not there's no cost-effective benefit here in terms of the funders. But we're working on that, and we're working we have been working with BC Housing and the Great Federation of Canadian Municipalities and CMHC, as well as other funders for that. So just catching up on my notes here.
We do need to move along here pretty quickly, Deb.
Okay, so I would like to just mention that that the key insights or lessons that we've learned is patience. That was reflected by April. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of energy, and you have to be diligent and committed to the process. We needed to do a lot of education to the community and the approving bodies. And we found that collaborating with other housing societies was really, really important in this process. And so we value that. We've talked with many of the folks on this panel, or your colleagues from your housing societies. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, thanks so much, Deb. And I'd like to turn now to a fellow Galiano Islander. Avi, are you there? Talk about the
I am,
Galiano
yeah.
Cottage Co-op. Over to
Yeah,
you.
hi. Yeah, you can hear me? Okay. So yeah, the Galiano Cottage Co-op is, like on Mayne, a very small development in a small population center. And we are in the process, so we have land that's sort of in a good central location, close by the school. And we are in the process of building currently effectively 4 two-bedroom units on that land, and they're actually fairly close to completion. And we do have the zoning to build more on that. Funding, just echoing things that a lot of people have said, this is a small project. It doesn't fit with BC Housing. We did apply through CMHC's co-op intake and were denied. And the reason for that, I think, is a combination of the extra cost of construction here, but primarily that their data, they don't have good data for the rental market in the Gulf Islands. And so they were treating us kind of generically as rural British Columbia. And so their beliefs about the rent that was appropriate to charge was more like if we were in Terrace or something like that. And so it just didn't match up. And so, we've been lucky enough to get some short-term, kind of construction financing, but finding more funding to complete the project with more units and kind of take out financing going forward is a challenge. The thing that has been a great accelerator for us is that we deliberately kept the project small and kept it on land that was residentially zoned under the standard zoning for for enough units to make the project make sense to us. And so we did not have the pre-development costs of rezoning. We did not have subdivision to deal with. And that made a huge difference in terms of just being able to kind of hit the ground running. obviously it's a trade-off in the sense that if we had tried to rezone to a larger project, a denser project, then funding possibilities might have been easier. But yeah, just to sort of echo a lot of what other folks said, civil costs are huge. I mean, we're drilling wells, we're putting in a big water system, we're putting in not a lot, but some new roads, septic systems, et cetera, et cetera. That's just a really big ticket item on the project. And the other challenge for us that's specific to a co-op is that the province's rental assistance program does not apply to co-ops, even to nonprofit co-ops. And that means that, a lot of the people who would be members and residents are not able to afford it because they don't get that assistance they would normally get from the province. And so that's something that that has become very clear to us as we're kind of getting ready to welcome people into these homes. I think just posted in the group chat was a petition about this to the provincial government that people can take a look at.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and the petition, and then it just showed up in the chat. So, Avi, do you want to comment about a little bit? Whoops. Oh, there we go. Do you want to comment a little bit about the other aspect of the co-op, about reaching out to private landowners and so on?
Yeah, so we have the land that the co-op owns that we are building on, but that only supports under current zoning so many units. And so the other model that we are looking at is to take advantage of extra density that exists in the zoning of the island, which is to say that many people have the right to build a cottage as well as their primary home on their land. And so, we are working towards agreements with landowners where effectively, we as the co-op build a cottage on their land, and then get the use of it for enough time to pay back the construction costs, after which time the cottage, the unit belongs to the landowner and they can do what they like with it. And so this is almost like no money's changing hands here, right? But they get they end up with a free dwelling effectively, some decades down the line, which might be useful for their children or for aging parent or something that they can foresee a need for it. And then in the meantime, the community gets some extra housing. So that's a model we're looking at. Again, it's challenging making the numbers pencil out. It's very sensitive to interest rates. It's very sensitive to construction costs, right? But it does expand the possible scale.
Yeah, it's quite a unique model, and your website is in the chat, and I'm sure, maybe I shouldn't speak for you, but you'd be willing to talk to people about the model if they'd like to contact you. Okay.
Yes, well, with the caveat that I cannot say that we have tested this model yet, except that just that we've spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking to people about it. But none of these agreements are yet in place.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Avi. Just want to stay with Galiano for another few minutes, and tell you a little bit about the Galiano Affordable Living Initiative Society's project. Maybe we can have the next slide. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So on Galiano, we also on Galiano, the Galiano Affordable Living Initiative Society, aka Gali, was successful in rezoning a 10-acre undeveloped forested parcel located right next door to our seniors housing on Galiano, but for a new project to develop affordable rental housing, 20 units of affordable rental housing. And we partnered with New Commons Development, a nonprofit affordable housing developer, to acquire the pre-development funds and engage the professionals to design the project. And it was a 2 to 3 year project itself, over 2 to 3 years, to develop all the plans, the permitting, the water permits, all that sort of stuff. The project is named Thuthikat Halalam, which means forest homes in the Holcominian language. And there'll be, as mentioned, 20 units, including studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units in 4 multi-unit buildings. And the tenants will be, we assume, singles, couples, families, and seniors. What's maybe a bit unique in our project is after reaching the building permit stage with our planning and permitting, Gali agreed to transfer the property and the project to the Capital Regional District. And that the CRD has committed $2.75 million to get started on the project construction and has been actively working to secure additional construction funding and long-term financing needed for the project. And I'm happy to say that's looking positive. And once the housing is constructed, Gali will become the housing operator. I'm also pleased to say that tree clearing and site preparation for the project got underway just this week. As for challenges, as the other community housing organizations on the panel have said, we have, those of us undertaking these projects on the islands have particular challenges because of the realities of living on the rural islands, and not least of which is the extra cost of transportation of materials and off-islands tradespeople to the islands. And also, as other people, other presenters have mentioned, although our proposed projects may be large in the context of our small communities and really impactful, the funders definitely consider us pretty small potatoes. And our projects is viewed as risky because our community housing groups typically don't have an extensive history of building and operating these kinds of projects. And there's also the challenge of keeping rents affordable for these smaller projects while covering operational costs, unless there is an ongoing subsidy, like, for example, through BC Housing's Community Housing Fund. For insights, I had thought just to say that our small rural island communities, are not usually top of mind for the regional districts that we belong to. However, if you're fortunate and your regional district has recognized the critical need for housing in your island community, and you have support at the political level, that can open doors to funding and to regional district staff support. And as Gali's a prime example of this, because we've been greatly helped by the support of our Capital Regional District Electoral Area Director and by staff at the Capital Regional District. The Capital Regional District has really stepped forward to understand and address the housing needs on the rural islands in the CRD. There's a Southern Gulf Islands housing strategy that's been developed you can get from the CRD website. And more recently, the Capital Regional District is undertaking a pilot project in the Southern Gulf Islands and the Salt Spring electoral areas in 2025-2026 as part of an overall program to design or a project to design a rural housing program for the regional district. So all of that's pretty exciting stuff. I see the next slide is up because I wanted to just wrap up our panel by just touching back on the advocacy to the provincial government that came up. Simon mentioned this, and just remind those who were at the Gabriola Forum in 2023 that we did pass a resolution. They're calling for the creation of a rural housing authority. And with regard to regional districts, I'm really pleased to say, and I think Mark is on our forum this morning from Strathcona. The Strathcona Regional District and the Capital Regional District both wrote to the Premier and the Minister of Housing calling for the creation of a rural housing funding stream and the provision of rural specific support. And the minister replied, I think just in January, this funding stream would be considered. And the minister offered to discuss how to connect rural communities with existing policy initiatives and indicated great interest in the kinds of things, for example, the CRD is doing with a rural housing program pilot. So I think that wraps our panel up. I wonder, can we show all the panelists there? Oh, there's Mark.
Popped Mark in. He has a question.
Yes, Mark.
I just want to spend a quick minute. I really appreciate everyone sharing all these progress that we're making. It's awesome. I just want to touch on a few more things. One is every community has access to MRDT funding. This is basically a short-term rental tax. It's currently raising 50 grand a year for the Cortes Housing Society, so that's an opportunity for everyone. For tourist communities, opting into the primary residence requirement for Airbnbs puts downward pressure on the housing market and opens up more rentals. Changing your zoning and adding a nonprofit zoning category that allows your housing society to buy a piece of land and add more dwellings is a huge thing. And then Michael touched on it, creating a housing service at the municipal or regional district level that allows government to access funding to fund things and also do tax requisition for projects. So I just wanted to mention those things, and I'll put my email in the chat if any folks want to follow up or get support with that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. And I really urge people to get in contact with Mark and his colleague, Robin Mawhinney, also from Strathcona Regional District, about their leadership in promoting affordable housing projects in their rural islands. And I also a shout out to my own Capital Regional District electoral area director, Paul Bryant, who's also been a champion for affordable housing projects in the electoral area that he represents. So am I correct? We have a few more minutes. And if so, I was hoping that a few of the other RIEP team will have been looking at the chat and seeing if there are some questions or comments that perhaps the panelists would be able to address. Over to Mitch or whoever else is monitoring that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Yes, there's been a lot going on in the chat as we've been having our speakers. And I just want to say another thank you to all of the speakers and to you, Mike, for lining up such a great and inspiring group here who are really on the ground trying to make affordable housing happen in our communities. We have had lots of back and forth on the chat. I haven't seen too many questions, so I'm actually wondering if we might just have some raised hands again, if you want to ask a question to our panelist, or also jump in and share something else that's going on in your community for the rest of the people to know about.
Yeah,
so I've got, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I think early on in the chat, there might have been a question about water. Was there?
There might have been. So if you did have a question in the chat, maybe you could just raise your hand again. So I see April's hand up and then Dwayne.
I'm interested in hearing how Cortes shifted their MRDT money to housing, because Hornby also is now receiving MRDT money, but we're not able to allocate much of it to housing. And I think Cortes was successful in allocating a lot to housing. So I'm wondering if someone could speak quickly to how that was done.
Sure, I can do that. So MRDT was traditionally set up to provide funding for tourism advertising, basically. They're usually 3 to 5 year agreements, so those come up for renewal. So that's a chance for you to change that allocation. And it's really a political discussion in your community around how you want to do it. So it does take work and advocacy to reallocate or change the allocation, or have it all go to housing. And I'm really passionate about this. If you need help selling it to your council, you need help selling it to your community, you want some tips, please reach out.
Mark, there's a question in the chat. Is MRDT?
What does it actually stand for? I don't know, but if you Google MRDT application BC, you'll find something. It's an application form that your community fills in. You have to get 50% of your hotels signed on to it. So that's a barrier that you need to work on and have a strategy for. And it basically allows you to put up to 3% tax on short-term rentals. That money goes to the provincial government and then gets directly sent to your housing society or the nonprofit that you allocate to.
Yeah,
it's a municipal regional district tax. Yeah. Municipal regional district tax.
Back to Wayne up next.
Sorry, actually, Dwayne, before you go, I wanted to, there was a question in the chat and I wanted to just respect that somebody had asked something earlier. It's from Simon from Denman Island. The Denman Community Housing Society has a meeting scheduled with the housing minister at the end of March. Apart from requesting that a funding stream be dedicated to rural island projects, what other constructive requests do panelists suggest we might make? Mike, do you want to direct that at a certain
well, I'm just going to
or?
say, or anyone else in the audience, if you have some ideas for, well, I can just say that there can be other issues that affordable housing projects run into, things that like access roads and so on. So if we're talking to the province, it's not just the housing ministry, it is how do these affordable housing projects get the attention of, for example, the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, which looks after those kinds of tasks. I see there's some more hands here.
Sure. Yeah. So let's hear from Dwayne and then from Ellie.
Yeah, he built Chechiatha Chimusquagan for everyone for sharing all of the determinations on our remote communities and the island, including Cortes. You know, the one thing that I guess I should acknowledge the Cortes Communities Economic Development Association, who has requested me to sit in on this. So I'm grateful for them for giving me this opportunity to allow the opportunity to look and to see what's going on within our traditional territory. I always enjoy listening to other people's determinations. Yeah, that's kind of in terms of relationship building. I'll just sort of framework all of this all together in terms of framework building and relationship building. I sit on the board for this for CETA. Also, next week we're having an election. I'm also running for leadership, so I'm grateful for being given the opportunity to listen to everybody and to just so much connections and so much relationships that I'm very grateful and feel humble about all of the sharing that's been going on here today. So yeah. Having said that, I just really enjoyed today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dwayne. I really appreciate that comment. Mitch, I'm not sure. I see 3 hands up on my screen. I don't know who was first.
Yes, I have Ellie and then I believe Sheila.
I've got Eli lined up for you, and we've got
Eli. Pardon me, Eli. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question I posted earlier was regarding water. This is something I know we've been talking about here a lot on Denman, that we have all the issues with aquifers, and that's what all the, being able to do any development or put in smaller houses on properties all worries about water. And I was just wondering, we tried in the past, I'd actually worked helping with Simon at one point with trying to get the affordable housing on Denman, but we've been trying to push for some changes to the laws about having catchment systems that right now at this point people have to drill for water to hit the aquifers that are already overused in so many ways. When instead of spending $15,000 to drill a hole, you could be spending $15,000 or $30,000 to make an incredible resilient catchment water system that will last you the rest of your days. Is there anything that other islands have been doing to try to push this forward with? Islands Trust was a big one we were having problems with in the past on this. And also CBRD that's saying if we want to be building housing, can we just be utilizing, if we have enough storage, plenty of water happens in the winter. We just have to have enough storage to have it last through our summers in ways to be able to grow our islands in ways that are more sustainable in the long term.
Yeah, I just wonder if there any of the other panelists want to comment about the water is a challenge on all our projects. Any other panelists wish to comment about that?
Mike, I could jump.
I can say a little bit. Oh, sorry. I can say a little bit. I know that right now they're doing a suitable land analysis for Hornby and Denman. Islands Trust is carrying that out, and it will be looking at sensitive areas. So I think it's depending on what those reports show, it's a real opportunity for us to request that our bylaws include water catchment for any new builds. So I think there will be an opportunity coming up.
Yeah, yes. I also heard another voice. Was that Simon or?
Yes, it was.
Yes, please.
I was just going to add quickly that design on Denman includes a significant rainwater harvesting component to so we are not totally reliant on the well.
Okay, thanks. Is
Yeah,
Toby
so,
up next?
No, we have Sheila and then Toby.
Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah, no, thanks. I just wanted, regarding that idea of what to present to the provincial authorities, and I was at the forum where that motion was made, and I really endorsed the need to move from BC Housing to take some of the funding that would go directly to the islands and be more amenable to rural ways. We see that in everything. MODI standards, all kinds of things are just completely unsuitable and a real problem. But the other things that I really think would be helpful are that the 2% or the 20% vacancy tax and the 2% foreign ownership, or whichever way they are, and the primary residence only rule should be opt out rather than opt in. It is a really big challenge, political suicide potentially, for our trustees at this point to choose to opt in. You are putting a divisive issue, and it should just apply to all of them. And in fact, when those laws came in about vacant homes and foreign ownership in the Lower Mainland, what did people do with all their spare cash that they were realizing on their windfall profits on rising property levels? They came and invested in third and fourth homes on Hornby Island. And so our capacity to buy back into that is hugely diminished. So it would be a simple thing to make it province-wide, with the opportunity for a community that really, really, really wanted to be a tourist trap with people having to sleep in nearby communities or in trailers during the summer or whatever. It would make a huge difference in our capacity to retain our islands and put a balance between this stuff. And it's so simple. I mean, while they're at it, they could also make organ donation by opt-out. So, really,
so thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much.
You're taking it beyond our mandate, maybe, but anybody who is talking to the provincial government ministry, please suggest that.
Yeah, I
appreciate your passion very much. So, Mike, did you want to say something before?
Well, I don't know. Do we have time for Toby's question? Or
yes,
not?
I believe we do.
Yeah, Toby.
Good morning, everyone. Great conversation. I just wanted to point to an emerging project out of the Islands Trust that could offer hope for other areas and jurisdictions. So this is towards developing a legal regulatory framework for tiny homes and all the site-specific considerations, including water, catchment, sewerage, composting, toilets. So what I've really considered important in the development of housing in rural islands is how we can change the conversation of density. So density traditionally equaling one single family dwelling per lot. And that's how we control development in the islands, for instance. So what the Islands Trust is looking at is, through its policy statement amendment project as well, is whether we can change the conversation of density to a total square area footage with multiple dwellings that are clustered in areas where it makes sense. So on lots that would traditionally only have a single family dwelling, could you have, 2, 3, 4 tiny homes with a central utility? Could that land be owned by a housing cooperative or even a corporation in which each tiny home owner has a share? And if the cooperative, you sort of own your tiny home, move it on. If you need to go somewhere else, sell your share to somebody else and move it off again. So distributing land ownership is also another piece of the puzzle. And that's why I mentioned Coho BC. There are other organizations doing this, but it's in the chat. They help structure land title sharing agreements. And so there's a lot that's happening, and look for we'll be at AVICC if any of you are there. Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, Director Vanessa Craig from the Regional District of Nanaimo, and I will be presenting on the results of this this joint meeting of experts to develop that tiny home regulatory framework. So that'll come out at the AVICC. So look for that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. That's really right up to date. I think we're done now, but I would like to, with our time, I would just really like to thank again Elizabeth and Adam and Bruen and April and Simon and Deb and Avi for participating in the panel today. I think we covered a lot of ground and it was just a tiny sample. So thanks again to everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. And yeah, thank